video is for all of you out there who want to start reading classics, but for whatever reason are feeling overwhelmed or worse, or put off by previous experience. Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Paulina Maria. Here we talk about books. I am not studying literature. I am not writing a novel, and I certainly don't have to read classic books for my job. And yet, so far this year, out of the 58 books that I have read, 30 of them were classics. There is no question this has been the best reading year for me when it comes to classics. And on reflection, I credit this to the fact that most of these classics that I have read were easy and fun to read. They certainly didn't feel like a chore. And I think that's because they met these two criteria. One, they were written with clear, accessible, and yet very vivid language. And two, these books were truly able to hold my attention for whatever reason. It could be great characters where I just couldn't wait to see what happens to them. It could be a bit of a suspense. It could be a really well-paced plot. And so out of all these 30 books, I want to present to you today top 7 that I feel like I can confidently recommend to you if you want to start with classics and you want to make sure that your start is successful. Start with these. I promise you, you will not be bored. You will be heavily invested in the lives of the characters of these books, and I promise you 100% engagement and enjoyment. The way I'm going to do this is I'll go in chronological order as the books were published, and I will give you a brief overview of each book that is supposed to get you excited. If you want an in-depth summary of each book, I have a video on each and every single book, which I will link in the description. The oldest book in my collection is the book that was published in 1813, and that is the one and only Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. Interestingly, this book was actually first titled First Impressions, and that title was rejected by the publisher at the time. It was then revised to become Pride and Prejudice. I don't need to say too much about this book. In terms of the plot, we follow this young woman named Elizabeth, who in the late 18th century in rural England is navigating various issues of marriage, class, falling in love, and while this is not exactly the happiest of romances, if you start analyzing the marriages here a bit more deeply, and while this book has lots of hidden depth due to its social commentary, it is all wrapped in wit and fantastic character development in romance of which formula was set in this book, which we follow to this day, 200 years later. That just absolutely blows my mind. This book is easy to read because it talks about all these things that we can still relate to this day. So social expectations, relationships, Pride and Prejudice. But the main reason why I feel confident that you will just breeze through this book is the way the characters were written. You will become so invested in them, you will not be able to wait to see what happens to them, and they really will become your family. With the next book, we travel to Norway because I want to recommend you a play by Henrik Ibsen titled Ghosts, which was published in 1881. Now, I know some of you will be wondering why on earth is she recommending a play when plays can be actually quite painful to read. Not this one. This play is set in one single location, which is actually just one room. It takes place during one day and you only have a handful of characters. I think there are 5 main characters. This book is perfect for those of you who have in the past been put off by literary fiction that is very character driven and has very little plot. This is so fast paced. and has so much drama and so much intrigue. I promise you, you will not be able to put this down because there is so much packed into these merely 70 pages. We follow a widow who needs to confront the actions of her deceased husband. And during that process, family trauma and certain secrets are revealed. Ibsen's work was groundbreaking in the sense that he was one of the first drama writers whose work was designed not to entertain, but to offer a commentary on that current society morality. And this particular play caused a huge scandal at the time. It was banned. So yes, if you think you need something super dramatic and emotional to pull you into classics, I can't recommend this highly enough. With the next book, we travel across the ocean because we are in the US this time, where Edith Wharton wrote Ethan from. I have read this book only just recently. I absolutely loved it. Apparently, this is based on a real life story, which is fascinating to me. And this is where Edith Wharton took her inspiration, especially when it comes to writing the tragic climax in this novella. This piece of work is very tragic. It's about a man who is stuck in a loveless marriage and is stuck in his own very dire economic circumstances. To me, this book, for some reason, brings a very similar feeling to the one I had after I read Wuthering Heights, even though they're very, very different books, and I would definitely not recommend you read Wuthering Heights as a starting entry to classics. But if you do tend to lean towards a tragedy and I would say haunting types of stories, then this one will be for you. Interestingly, this book was published in 1911, the same year when in England Frances Hodgson Burnett was writing The Secret Garden. What a contrast. Anyway, I highly recommend this book. One other thing I wanted to mention is that I know this is read at school in the United States. I do think this should be read by a fully matured adult in order to completely comprehend this book. I do think you need a little bit of life experience behind you. This next book is by a Scottish author, Josephine Tay, and the title of this book is The Franchise Affair. If you've been on this channel, you have heard me talking about this book because this is one of my favorite classics I have read this year, and yes, I can't shut up about it. And of course, you could, as your entry to classics, read Agatha Christie, who was writing around the same time as Josephine Tay, but why not be a little bit different? I don't know why Josephine Tay is not talked about more, because her writing is just exquisite and so fun and so engaging. So this is a crime novel in which we follow this lawyer who defends a mother and a daughter accused of kidnapping. So there is definitely a suspense element here, but it is the writing of the characters and the underlying humor that you can sense through so many brilliant dialogues that keep you going. I chuckled a lot when reading this book, and I am definitely reading all of Josephine Tay's novels. You will definitely not be disappointed. Book number 5 is My Cousin Rachel by Daphne du Maurier. I am obsessed with this book, which, by the way, currently sits as my number 1 book I've read this year. Most of you will have heard of Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. This book was written later. It was published in 1951. Apparently, in Daphne du Maurier's response to criticism she received after she published Rebecca, that her female character was very passive. So here you have complete opposite. The This story revolves around a young man's obsession about his very enigmatic cousin by marriage. Her name is Rachel, and really throughout the book you find yourself trying to answer a question, which is Rachel a calculating murderer, or is she a caring and grieving widow? This is psychological thriller at its best. The suspense and ambiguity carried in this novel from the beginning to the very end are maintained so consistently and so well with wonderful writing, where it feels like there's nothing spare. There are no spare sentences, there are no spare words, and yet the picture that we're building in our head as we're reading this book is so clear and so vivid. I read this in 2 days because I just couldn't put it down. The author of the next book, Françoise Sagan, was just 18 when this particular book was published, and she became an overnight sensation because of this book, which was highly acclaimed straight away. This book was published in 1954, and it tells a story of a 17-year-old girl who is holidaying with her widowed father in French Riviera. The book is told from her perspective, and while she's in this French Riviera, she meddles with her father's love life, of which we witness some devastating results. I feel like this book would be great for young adult readers. So for someone who is maybe 17 or 18 or 19 years old, because the youthful, how should I put this, disillusionment is captured so well in this book. It is a very easy read, and because of the subtle but continuous hints of incoming doom, you get very curious and you need to see this book through, and because of that it is very gripping. So here's a French modern classic for you. There is one more book that I want to mention to you because I just can't leave it out. Let me see if you can guess which one it is. So this book was published in 1960 in the United States. It was published by an author who has not written anything after this novel for the next 50 years. Do you know yet which book I'm talking about? Of course, it is To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. I discovered this book this year and I'm in love. I'm in love with the book and I'm in love with Atticus Finch. This book explores racial injustice and, I guess, moral attitudes in the American South. But because the whole story is told through the eyes of a child, it is a very accessible book to read if you are just beginning with classics. To me, it's like a perfect combination because on one hand, you've got coming of age story, and on another hand you have this profound critique of prejudice and profound commentary on the theme of outsider. I hope you will enjoy these super accessible, super fun and super easy to read books. And the best thing about these books is that you don't need a degree in literature to truly enjoy them. If any of these titles caught your attention and you're planning to read them, please let me know which ones. And if you have already read these books, also I would love to hear from you. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in my next one.